Excellent, almost full house. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. My name is Gleb. I have around 20 seconds remaining to introduce the panelists, and I'm really got him excited because Juha Ruohonen, Superhero Capital, one of the bluntest people I know, one of the most direct people I know, he's going to talk about failure. And something tells me he doesn't know what he's going to talk about, but he has a lot to share. Now, Stewart Rogers, one of the most experienced journalists, analysts at large at Venturebeat, a channel I frequent regularly. Cristobal Alonso, a guy who's been part of 2 startups of his own, brought it to an A round. He's been part of corporates, mostly telecom companies, and now he's running StartupWiseGuys, the global capo, if I'm not mistaken. Now, we will Anna, who has at some point quit a very public, known company Front, but now, and almost failed at her, I believe, failed at her marriage and built a company around that. So there's going to be a lot of interesting things. Now, I kindly welcome them on stage, and please a hand of applause for all of them. Guys, woo!
Hey. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us all here today. It's great to see so many of you at the end of the day. Should we try and keep this one PG? Because I feel like there were a lot of swear words all the way through the day. Do you think? Or fuck no to that? Okay, so not PG. Good. Listen, we're going to talk about actually quite a serious subject. It's about failure. Failure. We fail all the time. Failure is actually incredibly important. We're going to find out why. We're going to dig into that. Cristobal, how do we, first of all, define failure in the first place? I mean, what actually is there, what kind of KPI, if you want to use the startup term, is there for actually defining failure in the first place? How do we know we've done it?
Yes.
Hey.
Failure is not trying to do what you want to do. So not to follow your passion and be too afraid to try. Everything else is basically opportunities and learnings and step backs in which you actually just take learnings and move forward. So to me, the only actually failure is look back in life and say, I wanted to do this one and I was too afraid to try. That's to me the only failure in life, and until we die, about 10 seconds before that, we don't have time to think about it.
Just 10 seconds before that.
Hopefully.
Okay. Anna?
Yeah, I can add that I think another definition of failure would be not learning from the mistakes. So just having mistakes is not failing, but not learning from those mistakes, that is failing.
Juha, what's your opinion?
When you repeat the mistakes you do and you don't learn, that's failure. We all make mistakes. That's human.
Because Einstein once famously said that the definition of madness is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting different results, right? So, look, Ernest's actually, this morning in the very first panel on the main stage, he doesn't know it, but he kind of threw out a little bit of a challenge to us for this panel today. Because he was saying that we all talk about our past failures a lot, and we're going to dig into those because I want to give some really great examples of past failures for everyone here so that we can maybe learn some of those lessons together jointly. But he said that nobody talks about their current failures. So what are you currently failing at? And be as brutally honest as possible, please. I mean, Juha, what are you currently failing at?
Not having beer here on the stage.
That's a very big failure. Can we
That's a bad one.
Can we get some beer here stat? Can anyone do a runner? But seriously, tell us what's going wrong for you right now.
Well, obviously, when we can't support one of our companies well enough, that's a failure. I fully realize that us VCs, we're sometimes very slow at, replying. That's a failure, I would say. And we get constant feedback on that, and we still don't do it properly, which means we're stupid, right? Because we don't improve. I mean, these are just examples. I don't know if you can call them failure or mistakes, but anyway.
Anna, what's your current failure?
When I was listening to the morning speech, that's what I was thinking about. So what is my current failure? And I came to this feeling that I'm failing right now in building my team. So I don't have a co-founder or co-founders. I'm really looking forward to having them, but I'm failing so far. I'm not making the team. And yesterday I talked with Roberto Bonanzinga, who was also on the stage today, and he pointed out something that I hadn't realized. Because I think the thing with the current failures is that we don't realize them. We can only kind of understand them later, or we have to be very critical about ourselves. And he pointed out something that I'm still thinking about. So me, I'm building a new company, just launched 1 year ago. So financially very risky and stressful. And my husband as well is struggling a lot. So I don't know if we as a couple and as a family might be currently failing in building a stable family financially and so on.
Awesome. That's awesomely honest.
We'll see that later.
Awesome. Cristobal.
Okay, as a good entrepreneur, and even if we run an accelerator, we're entrepreneurs. We have personal cash flow issues every end of the month, and I still get pissed off every end of the month thinking about it and during the 30th of every month, right? So I'm failing actually at preparing myself and deal with that better. We like to be doing things faster. And sometimes we just need to adapt to the rhythm, but I think sometimes that feels a bit as a failure. I did 167 flights last year, and the previous year 170. So clearly I'm failing sometimes at disconnecting or maybe prioritizing sometimes more family time. I enjoy what I do dramatically, so sometimes I don't even recognize it. But every end of the year I said, next year I'm going to fly much, much, much less. And I think I did 7 flights less, right? So probably I'm failing at that one a little bit.
So we've all had. I mean, I'm not here maybe to share my failures out as an expert as you three are, but we've all, I know, had failures. Now, one of the things that I think is really interesting is that we don't at tech conferences very much talk about mental health and talk about how we deal with these things. Can we just get into that a little bit? I mean, how do you get through the day when you have a failure? How do you get back up again? How do you maintain good mental health and not go off the rails? Juha, can you give us any insights?
Well, of course, everyone expects me to say to get drunk, but I'm not going to say that, even though I'm Finn. So I think time will heal. That's number one. I've experienced that firsthand. For example, after my divorce, I mean, time will heal. But in general, I think once you understand why it happened, it really helps. And that's also the learning part. So if you never ask yourself, why did this happen? Is there something I could have done differently? Then you'll never learn. It's quite simple, really. But people are different. They take failures and all the other things that happen in their life, of course, very differently depending on the person. So there's no rule that, okay, just do this and it will be okay, because it's a personal issue.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about that, Anna, and how important is it to have a really strong network around you, or are you one of those people who maybe can get up on your own and just deal with it?
Is it for me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the network of people is like it's like oxygen. It's you really need to have those, and so one of my failures was that I was part of co-founders for the startup Froont, and we split up. The team split up, and well, I failed at that. So I got sick, and I got some like personal life problems and everything. And I was trying to solve those with getting drunk as well, but that was a failure. So that doesn't really work.
You couldn't get drunk, or what was the failure?
Well, no. The failure was trying to solve those things by getting drunk. So that didn't work. For those of you who try that, I can say from my personal hard experience that didn't work. For me, what works now is meditation And yes, that network around me. I have a best friend with whom we meet for lunch at least once a week, and we are psychotherapists for each other. So we tell like everything to each other, and we try to help the other person get up when they feel really down. So that is super important and helps a lot. So currently I'm building the company alone, but I'm not that person who would like to do that, and who I don't believe that it can be like really possible in the long run.
Yeah, I think that just a 30 seconds story. So we were in 2008. We were trying to get our Series A, and we were 10 days to basically go bankrupt, so not to be able to pay our employees. And we're negotiating a €2 million round, and we're negotiating every detail, and every day was like 9 days, 8 days, 7 days. So I slept really, really bad, and so all my partners. One of my partners has not been able to sleep well after that. So he has never really recovered from insomnia, for that stress. And I think it teaches you need to listen to your body. I always laugh about this with my partner on it. But you need to be able to recognize when your body is telling you enough is enough. You might be getting sick. You might be, there is signal there. So you need to be looking at yourself. And I think you need to know what relaxes you, or what at least takes you out of the space. In my case, it's playing basketball. In my case, it's cooking. And maybe people don't talk about it. They talk about being drunk. I think having a good sexual life with your partner actually is very helpful. So if you don't have it, actually, maybe you should be getting the hacks clothing from Anna and getting back in touch with your partner. But I think it's very important to understand what that means for you. And if you had that one, probably you're going to be recovering very soon from your stress. And if you like what you're doing, the next day in the morning, you usually get up and say, let's go forward. So that also helps.
Yeah, that's really, really important. And thank you for bringing up meditation. I'm a big fan of that. I credit it actually with entirely changing my life and allowing me to do a complete 180 degrees when everything was going wrong. So
May as well.
yeah, exactly.
Can I mention one more thing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I realized I forgot to say that. So you mentioned the things that like help you get these things out, because you these like negative emotions, this cortisol, it piles up in your body. So you need to get it out. Sex, wonderful way to do that. Sports, awesome way to do that. Running, meditation. For me, another thing which I discovered a couple of years ago when I failed, writing music. So I started writing songs. They were just coming out of me, like from nowhere. And they were just like, I was writing them down, and I was, in the middle of night, I had to run to the toilet, to the bathroom, and quickly sing it into the phone, because I couldn't sleep. It was like going on in my mind. So getting it out in any way you can. For me, it's writing the songs, but it could be any other way. So poetry, blogging, I don't know. I think these things are popular because they are a way of therapy as well out of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You've all mentioned something there that in some way, shape or form is either distractive. So drinking is a distraction. It basically makes it go away. Or creative. And that's very interesting. The creative stuff is something that maybe has more longevity, do you think, than distractive techniques?
I think I wouldn't call it distractive. I would call things that you need to focus 100% on it to really enjoy them, right? So when you're having sex, you have to be there. When you're cooking, you have to be smelling the food, you have to be cutting. You cannot be on your phone, you cannot be doing anything else. When you're writing a song, it's the melody invading your head, and you cannot be doing any other things, right? So I think maybe what we are looking for is the things that when you do them, you are at the moment just doing that, and you're enjoying being there with yourself and with your hobby, right? So I think I wouldn't call it distracted, I would call it almost all the opposite. Things that you do that is fully focused on the moment, on doing that thing, and forgetting every other noise around you that is actually bothering you.
By the way, I just learned a very important lesson. Apparently, sex, you have to be there. That's obviously where I'm going wrong. So, thank you for that. So, Juha, one of the things I noticed when, so I just recently came in from Tel Aviv to Riga, and in my last trip to Israel, I did a very deep dive on what makes Israel such a special place in terms of startups. And one of the things I noticed there was that their attitude to failing and just getting back up again is largely rooted in nihilism, in fact, because they just never know whether the next day is going to be the last day. You know, it's nihilism really drives that. They just have absolute no fear. I mean, do you think that those kinds of cultural differences make a big impact on people, or is that sort of just get back up again thing just an entrepreneurial spirit thing?
No, they absolutely matter. So a few years back there was this big research done on the sort of startup metrics on what makes great startup nations. And for example, one of the key sort of characteristic was ability to tolerate uncertainty. And the best countries were countries like Israel, where it's an everyday thing. You just have to accept that. And the worst countries were all the Nordic countries, because we have very high social safety nets. So it is a difference. So there's still a stigma when you fail. It's not like you bounce back like you do in the Silicon Valley. Okay, I flipped my startup. Okay, what is the next one? That's what everyone asks. But there's still a stigma associated. But I think that the fact that did you fail or not, it's your personal choice. It doesn't matter what everyone else thinks. I know that you see a lot of entrepreneurs where the company is flying, they stick with it way too long. They just accept that, oh, we tried everything, it doesn't go, we'll flip it and we'll do something else. And for example, they think like, okay, what are my investors going to say? And I can tell you all that we're professionals. We understand that that's the name of the game. So as long as you've tried everything and we've tried it together, it's perfectly okay to flip the company, and then we will probably invest into your next venture because we did everything. So don't think what someone else is thinking. Do it from your own perspective. Have I done everything? Am I ready to accept that it didn't go? And then the next one. But it is a cultural thing, heavily.
I mean, Anna, tell us, how you built your latest venture and how failure played a big part in that.
So,
Thank you.
we got the beer. Awesome.
yay!
No, I mean, it's just the one.
But he asked for it.
This is just an example. Life is not fair.
This is what I'm trying to teach my daughters from day one. So they're like, this is not fair. Nothing is fair in this life. But yeah, so I had a startup. I had 2 kids and a family, and the startup wasn't going as expected. And my family life got really shaky because my husband was also in startups. So we basically didn't see each other ever, except for we were lying next to each other in bed. But I'm telling you, that is not how our relationships work in the long term. So that is how it led to my current venture. So I realized I need to fix this. Like, I cannot live with someone with whom we are like live together but not together. And so I started researching on what makes relationships work in the long run. And it turns out physical contact and physical contact with attention, what you mentioned. So being there is really important in building long-term relationships. So I thought, okay, how can we facilitate this physical contact? Because we're always like in clothes, and it's cold in our countries, and we don't have time to be 2 of us. And so I thought, maybe if there were clothes where you can put your hand through and touch the other person, maybe that could work. And I started telling my idea to my friends, and they were like, wow, this sounds really cool, you should try that. So I started prototyping, and I found out it really worked. So that's how I got my new venture, from failing the previous venture, almost failing my marriage, and now stuff is working. We're having sex.
So that's taking failure, understanding the lesson from it, using it as inspiration then to build something. I mean, what's maybe, Cristobal, some of the biggest lessons you've learned from your own personal failures, and how have you used those for inspiration going forward?
One of the lessons that I tell all of our founders in Wise Guys is always that you need to have the dinner, what I call the dinner. And that's the time in which you sit down with your partner and you tell them, do we want to do this together? Because you cannot be an entrepreneur if your partner is not coming along. You need to understand that there is not going to be any vacation, that the kids might not go to the school that you wanted to do, that you might not actually be available many nights at all. So what are the rules that we're going to set in this partnership, in this marriage, or whatever it is the relationship you have, to make it work? When are we going to make sure that we have a button to say, hey, prioritize me, not your startup? How are you going to deal with this? Because a lot of people go through this, and I always say the last thing you want to do is to get home after everything is going wrong and your partner tells you, I told you. Or even worse, you don't tell anything to your partner because you know he or he is going to tell you, I told you, so you actually become a complete world. And the person is like, is anything wrong with you? But you don't want to share because you're actually even afraid of the reaction. So I think it's actually this partnership that needs to be built about, is your dream, share your dream, and make it a joint dream. And set the rules in which that is going to work. Because this is going to last, even if it goes well, at least 5 years of a hard life. So I think you need to put this in front and be very clear. And sometimes you can just not do the startup because your partner is not ready for it, and you're going to get a startup and a divorce. So, you know, you can do your trade-off and make your choices.
So, you know, Juha, that seems to me then that a lot of maybe protecting yourself, not against failure, because failure has to happen, but protecting yourself when it does is involved in being very open and honest before you even get started. Would that be a reasonable assumption, or do you just go for it and then see what happens?
Well, I think it's in human nature that you tend to over-communicate the good things and you tend to hide the bad things. And we can clearly see it in our portfolio of 17 companies that there's some entrepreneurs that are extremely eager to contact us and inform us when something good happens, and when something bad happens, they just hide it totally. And you should actually do it the other way around. Mm-hmm. Because if there's a problem, you need to react. You need to do something. So how can you react if you have no clue, if you don't know about it? And usually they tell it before it's too late. And then you have either a limited number of options or too little time to do anything. So, but this is human nature, I would say. We all do that, to some extent at least.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. And in fact, in one of my companies, because I didn't always used to be a journalist, I did actually used to sit on your side of the table. I used to tell people, always tell me the bad news first. The good news appears on the profit and loss and the monthly sales figures. But the quicker you tell me the bad news, the more time we have to fix the problem.
Good news you can read from Twitter. So.
Oh, you can read on Twitter? Apparently. There's good news on Twitter. You heard it here first. So it's not just all
other than
nonsense.
Trump. His tweets are no good news, but anyway.
It's okay. You can put a filter on for all caps tweets, and then you never see them, so it's good. So, listen, we want to make sure that we leave a couple of minutes for any audience questions. If you have a question for any of these wonderful people, put your hand up, but don't start speaking because we're going to run a microphone out to you. So I'm looking around for a hand. There's a hand over there. So can we get you a microphone? It's coming, it's coming. It's going to be one of these awesome boxes that you could throw, so let's make sure it doesn't hit your head. Right there.
Good-looking Indian guy there. Yeah.
Yes.
The handsome fucker with a beard.
Yay!
That was
good, that was good.
Right, does it work? Okay. So yeah, I had a question for, I don't know, any one of you really. How do you guys deal with forgiving people? Because sometimes your failures, in your opinion, are a result of actions or the other person not understanding. This could be a co-founder, this could be an accountant, an investor, and in your case, for example, an investor, did you feel like company held you responsible for their failure? So what's this closure? How do you get this closure with that person? Because you're super pissed off, and you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to give this some time. How much is good time, and is it needed?
Go ahead.
So yeah, forgiving is a huge part of getting over failure, and it involves forgiving yourself as well, and of course forgiving other people who were with you in the failure. And I don't know if there's a direct great answer to that. I try to kind of listen to Dalai Lama in this, but meditation helps as well, just understanding yourself and understanding that really everyone actually always wants the best it's just misunderstandings that happen. And yeah, so misunderstandings, I think, is the biggest problem. So just someone not understanding me, or we don't understand the situation. And when you kind of realize that it's just a misunderstanding, it's much easier to forgive. So I think there are no people usually who intentionally want to fail you or want to fail with you. So just, yeah, trying to get over that. But it takes sometimes years, I guess, anyway.
Well, I partly disagree on the part that people always want what's best. I know that there are people who don't. And for those people, you shouldn't forgive, because they did it on purpose. But most of us, of course, do it for the good. And of course, like if they tried everything and they failed, of course you should forgive them, because they didn't do it on purpose. But I think there's people who do bad things on purpose. Of course.
I've been so lucky, haven't met them, I guess.
Well, let's not go through the history of the world, but there's a lot of people. So.
But I think forgiving even those is like important for yourself, for your peace of mind. No?
Maybe.
Sure, but it's hard.
Not working with them anymore, but just forgiving.
But I think there's a difference, because you are so close for a period of time that actually sometimes even you understand that sometimes it's your business partner or your friend, or is it? And to me it's like, first you need time, but secondly it's like, don't try to forgive to become friends again. To me it's like time to forgive and then realize, hey, if I run into this person in an airport, I will pleasantly have a coffee with them. But don't try to forget to be friends, because sometimes you're never going to be friends again. Because just life has changed, the situations have changed. So to me it's more about, hey, I run into them, I give a hug. I have 3 co-founders. One of them, I want nothing to do with him, but if I met in the airport, we have a coffee, ask about the families. One, I have nothing to do with him business-wise, but great guy. And one of them is a close friend, right? But I didn't try to become friends with the other 2 guys. But I have nothing negative anymore when I see them, etc. So don't try to forgive to become friends. Try to forgive to say what happened was a matter of all of us. We all did something that we could have done better. So let's move on, and let's choose more carefully maybe the next time with whom and how we do it.
That's very good. Good question. Any other questions? Yes, we have one here. Feel free to throw that.
Yes. Hi, I'm Michael from Germany, and I've got a question to us as Baltic or Western European community. Growing up in a little village where you gossip about that your neighbor didn't cut the grass right, or what is he actually doing for a job. I was always really, really afraid to fail and kind of wanted to stick to this ideal Western European standard, get well education, then get a good job and do what society expects you to do. Until I failed my first startup, which was, of course, not a very great experience, but I don't feel sorry about failing or don't feel bad about it. And so my question is, us as a European or Baltic community, what can we do to take away the fear that I had until I failed? That would be my question.
Well, if you allow me, the one thing I always tell people is, get your kids to play team sports. Because you know what? You never win all the games. It's impossible, right? So you're going to be losing constantly, right? And you can blame the whole world, or you can learn that the next day there is another game. And I have a lot of discussions with my colleagues, how emotional sometimes they get when we lose a tender or something. It's like, game loss. Let's go back to practice. Let's get better prepared and be there for tomorrow. Second one, by being team sports, some days you shoot the last shot, and sometimes you clap, and sometimes you move the towel. But you're part of an organization in which everybody helps, right? So I think if we will all play team sports, I think we will do much better.
Juha?
I think you should start living your own life. So instead of living someone else's life, like your mother's or whatever, live your own life. Do whatever you love to do. And do the things that matter, and don't give a shit what everyone else thinks, right? So if you really want to do whatever it is to change the world for better, do it. And then people will accept it. And I fully understand what you were saying. That's I guess, the case for most of us. And this is the thing from Israel. I mean, one of the key takeaways why they're so successful, they always say it's the Jewish mothers. Like you list your company for NASDAQ for $1 billion, you go home after that from New York, and your mother says, well, you're still not a doctor.
Right. Anna, final words?
Yeah, I think it's also rooted in our education system that for years and for generations we've been taught that getting a low mark is bad and you should always get the good marks. So we should get that out of the system, and that then it could become a bit easier. But I see it with my daughters as well. They hate failing. They cry. They would love to never fail. And just what I try to show them, teach them, that failing is fine. But you just learn. You need to train yourself, and then you can be better. That's the.
Yeah, I think on the kids' part, it's always don't ask them why you fail. Ask them what did you learn. And if we do that to our own life, I think we'll do much better.
Fantastic. Listen, I hope we didn't fail in delivering a wonderful panel for you. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Cristobal, Anna, and Juha. Please give them a warm round of applause.
Thank you.